mean, obviously, we know that reform has done a lot of damage to the Conservatives, and they're going to have a massive existential crisis about, do they chase the reform dragon, or do they
Mm.
admit that they actually did lose votes to the Liberal Democrats and others. But what do you think the threat from reform to Labour could be like down the track?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the map now, you've got 90 seats where the Reform are second to Labour. That's a lot of seats. So it depends a bit on what happens with reform. Do they, Farage has not had a particularly good track record at building up parties after an initial surge of popularity. But if he brings in the right support and so on to build a bit of an infrastructure around reform, they'll have a bit of short money now from Parliament. They have a few MPs. If they can build a party, a proper party, it could be a serious threat in a lot of those seats. A lot of those majorities are only 5,000-6,000. Some of them are less than that. So you're going to have 90 of those Labour MPs all thinking, how do I fight reform? And then you've got 40 MPs who have the Greens second to them. And they're going to be thinking, how do I deal with this kind of left-wing insurgency against me? And some of those majorities, some of those gaps are not so big either. I mean, they saw what happened to Dangham Debonair and Bristol Central. So you're going to have these two different groups within the Labour Party, two different groups of MPs who have very different types of main opponent in their seat, very different types of demographic in their constituency, who might take very different views on immigration or crime or Europe, and that's going to be another big party management issue. How do you deal with kind of reform versus Greens? It's kind of like the Brexit issue on steroids almost, because it covers more than just one issue. It's as you say, party management. It's going to be a fun party management job. It's going to be,
And it will be interesting to see how the policy collides with the party management stuff.
right. No, and immigration is just such an obvious example. We did an episode on it recently. When you've got, it is inevitable you are going to have a situation in which Yvette Cooper and her team are going to want to do, they're obviously going to scrap Rwanda. They're not going to do the kind of crazy crap that the Conservatives did, but they will definitely want to show they're being tough on immigration in some way. And they will do things that Liberals don't like. And that's exactly the kind of area where you could get a split, or net zero is another area where you could so easily get a split, where on getting rid of petrol cars and all of that kind of stuff. So it's going to be difficult to manage those tensions, and this is exactly the difficulty of building the kind of massive voter coalition that Labour have with a huge majority. But yeah, we're falling into the trap a bit, aren't we? Of getting
we are. I was just thinking that I feel like we're talking ourselves into like a council of despair, and we have to be cheerful because it was a bloody good result. I mean, it was a really, really, really good result.
Yeah, and not just for Labour. I mean, the Lib Dems had an extraordinary result as well. It's the biggest third party in over 100 years, which is an extraordinary feat by itself, and will play a much bigger role now in politics than they have been able to since the end of the coalition, and that will be interesting too.
And what do you think the Liberal Democrats will do? Like, do you think they'll focus on a couple of policy areas and sort of push Labour on them, or do you think it'll just be more trips to Thorpe Park?
No, I think that was just the campaign, though he did seem to be enjoying himself. I think they'll focus on health and social care, and they will focus on the environment, and they'll push very hard on those things initially. But where they end up, I think, will depend a bit on where the Tories go. If the Tories go way to the right, then that opens up a space for them as the kind of centre-right party, if they want to take it, if they feel they can take it. If the Tories try and go back to the centre, or try and be at least sort of vaguely moderate, then it's quite hard for them to position themselves. I don't think they want to go to the left of Starmer, because they got into a mess doing that before.
Yeah.
But if Starmer acts in a fairly centrist way, and the Tories try and go back there, it gets very congested, that space. So it'll be quite interesting to see how they manage it. But what's sort of going to be amazing is that you're going to have and very different to anything we've ever had before, really, except, I guess, 97, 2001, but even more than 97, 2001, is the extent to which it's so many MPs are going to be from centre and centre-left parties. It's like 500 MPs from centre-left parties. And just 126 from right or centre right parties. It's incredibly unbalanced, and that's just going to feel so different after 14 years of the right having power. I just don't. I think it's almost impossible to adjust to what that's going to feel like until it starts to happen.